Okay, welcome to the 2024 Sec 4 Humanities Geography 2260/02 Common Test Revision. So, gentle reminder, right? Your common tests for this year only covers Cluster 3, Topic 2, climate change, as well as clusters Topic 3, 3.1, 3.2, and 3.3. So, the total textbook area that's covered, right, is from page 28 to page 81. Please bear in mind that the textbook is not the main source of information. Your SLS notes is the main source of information, but the textbook does provide a good summary of what you will need to know. So let's begin. I will run through your various topic areas and what are some of the key things that you should probably be looking out for, whether you understand, and if you don't, how you can go about maybe reading up a little bit more or watching some of the content videos that may be available online for you. So the first one, right, we'll be looking at Cluster 3, Topic 2. Cluster 3, Topic 2, what are we looking at? The general focus will be on these four main areas: natural variability of climate, as well as then moving on to looking at anthropogenic factors contributing to climate change, before looking at the final two areas, which is impact of climate change on natural systems, and then later on human systems. So for the first part here, for 2.1, what are we looking at? We're looking at what are the processes in nature, right, that causes variability over time. Okay, so there are actually three main concepts that you need to be able to understand. Number one, how does the changes in the Earth's orbit and the angle of tilt lead to the difference in exposure of Earth to solar radiation, okay, also known as shortwave radiation, and how does then that variation in exposure results in a change in the climatic conditions experienced on Earth itself. Next, the second one will be on occurrence of sunspots. Right? Would you be able to provide an idea of what sunspots actually are, where they come from, okay, and what is the consequential effect? Very importantly, that when sunspots occur in their cycle, what happens to the temperature on Earth? Okay, so this is another variability of climate caused by a natural occurrence. Finally, the third one that is in your notes or in your syllabus will be how large-scale volcanic eruptions can lead to a situation where you have a variability experienced in your climatic conditions. So, a couple of things to note here. When you're looking at large-scale volcanic eruptions especially, bear in mind that every time there is a volcanic eruption, at the moment in time, you could have a very large surplus of greenhouse gases being emitted from that volcanic eruption at that moment in time. Okay, the volume can be massive. So as a result, you can trigger, because of this massive release of greenhouse gases, you can trigger consequential greenhouse effects, okay, that are above the norm. However, bear in mind that these things do not occur at these large scales frequently. So you do have occurrences of volcanic eruptions. When you do read that it's frequent, you have to understand that the scale that you're looking at when you talk about frequent such large-scale eruptions is in terms of thousands of years, hundreds and thousands of years, right? So it isn't exactly very frequent in comparison to what you will look at in the next part of topic 2, which is the anthropogenic factors. Okay, so keep this in mind, right? What you see in the boxes, right, are things that are some trigger questions, so hopefully it may help you. So if you want to pause when we're at a certain particular thing, you want to take a closer look, please do so. The next subtopic will be on anthropogenic factors contributing to climate change. Keyword here, anthropogenic, please remember these are human factors that are a result of human action. So when you're looking at anthropogenic factors, one of the key concepts you must understand is the difference between greenhouse gas and enhanced greenhouse effects. What is the difference? And are there some similarities between the enactment and how these two things actually exist? Moving on, we'll be looking at things like how the burning of fossil fuels as an anthropogenic factor contribute to climate change, right? How through the changing of land use, okay, moving towards agriculture, moving towards industries, moving towards urbanization. How does this change of land use also consequentially cause or trigger a climate change situation on Earth? Okay, so processes, very important. Are you able to identify and give a brief description of these processes? Are you able to provide some idea of the intensity or maybe what kind of time scale we're looking at when you're talking about these factors? Okay, consequential effect on Earth's climate. Be specific. Does it cause enhanced greenhouse effect and consequentially lead to global warming, which is a rise in global temperatures? Right? So these are specifications that we need to see, okay? And always remember, if you're talking about examples, right, it will be very useful if you name us a location where this particular phenomena is observed to be on a scale that you are concerned with presenting. Moving on, one of the two first impact areas, first one will be on natural systems, right? So on natural systems, we're looking at how climate change will actually lead to changes in things like atmospheric and oceanic surface temperatures. Okay, consequentially, what do these mean in terms of progressively what kind of impact do you see? That needs to be explained as well if you pose the question on this. Okay, changes in ocean circulations and its consequential impacts, right? Changes in precipitation on land and its consequential impact. So key note here when you're talking about changes, right? Changes work both ways. It can be increased, it can be decreased. Do not be too obsessed with changes being definitely one-sided. It can be both-sided, right? Or it can be in the other direction as well. Finally, for this cluster climate topic 2 itself, on human systems, what are we looking at? How impacts of climate change can be different? What are the resultant differences because of climatic situations and because of development situations in the area we're studying? So you have to be able to explain why, because of a certain particular climate that this area is really experiencing, the impact of climate change may not be that severe for them. Okay, similarly, the level of development affects the ability of climate change to have an impact on the human systems, because human systems with development, with better development, with more money, you are able to then do more adaptation, more mitigation strategies that we will talk about later on. Okay, direct impact. What is the direct impact? What are indirect impacts on your ecosystem services? Okay, so direct impact, very clear. What are the extreme weather conditions that will occur as a result of climate change, right? So you can talk about heat waves, droughts, floods, wildfires, tropical cyclones. These are your major five direct impacts. Indirect impacts, you deal with your provisioning ecosystems, right? Your regulating ecosystem services, as well as your cultural ecosystem services. Okay, so please remember when you're looking at impact of climate change on human systems, there are indirect impacts, and then there is the version, there is the direct impacts. Okay, identification and description of process, very important. Idea of how bad these things are, like you talk about heat waves, is a couple of days of 29 degrees Celsius during noontime considered heat wave in a country like Singapore. Okay, so intensity, scale of process, how long does the thing last, right? What are some of the consequential impacts on humans? That's very important. So that is what you will possibly need to know for topic 2. For topic 3, what we are only looking at is these 3 areas, 3.1, 3.2, and 3.3, which is achieving sustainable development through climate action. What are some of these actions you can take? Variations of climate risk across places. Why is the likelihood of the climate risk or the severity or potential severity of the climatic risk different across different areas? Right, finally, we will also be looking at the effectiveness of mitigation strategies in building community resilience. So when you're looking at achieving sustainable development through climatic action or climate action itself, right, there are 2 main types. So you need to be able to tell the difference between what is a mitigation strategy, what is an adaptation strategy, what is the root aim of mitigation strategy. Okay, is it to deal with the root cause? What about adaptation? Why is it that we are not dealing with the root cause when we are looking at adaptation strategies? Okay, then what are these strategies going to target? Right? So climate change and its impact on development paths. What is a potential impact, or what are some of these potential impacts that on development, that when a country faces climatic conditions evolving and changing constantly, how will it impact a country's development? Okay, will it be more costly? Why would it be more costly? Will it be less costly? Okay, will you have access to more resources, more benefits, right? So always bear in mind that it's not always a one-sided argument. Okay, depending on the case studies that you have read, the situations that you're going to talk about, it can work both ways. But you have to be very, very clear about this, okay? And preferably, if you can, when you're trying to bring across a particular idea, you need to give us some form of a case study or a country that is actually doing this, or a country that has benefited greatly from their attempts to go about doing this kind of a sustainable development action, and then they are experiencing some positive impact from the climate change. Okay, moving on, we will also need you to look at variations of climatic risk across places. So, what are some of these factors that can lead to variations of the climatic risk? Right, the nature of the hazard, is this a short-term hazard, or is this actually a long-term hazard that is putting your area at risk? Okay, is your area itself vulnerable? In terms of vulnerability, are your people poor? Okay, is the government poor? Do you have access to basic things like pipe water, electricity? Right, these are things that are important, and these are things that will have a consequential effect when you're trying to deal with climatic risk. Okay, exposure as well. Where exactly is this place that you're talking about? Okay, if you are at a coastal environment, of course, your risk towards coastal issues, coastal climatic issues like sea level rising, like sudden increases in tropical cyclones, you will get hit first. So proximity to coastal environment is one big problem. Proximity to dry environments. If you're already in the desert and then I tell you we're gonna cut off your because of climatic change, you're not gonna have you're gonna only have half the amount of rain you get annually. Right? What would that mean? It's actually very serious for countries or for locations that are already very near dry environments. Okay. So once again, if you look at the box again, are you able to identify and describe? Identify and describe. So it doesn't really matter whether we are going to test you this in terms of OEQ or not. Even in a short answer question, in a structured question, in when you're doing extraction of data and embellishing it with your own explanation from a data source, you need to be able to identify and provide some description of whatever you're talking about. Okay, bear in mind the word or the term itself of that idea is not going to be enough. You need to give a description. Okay, and do not get confused between the description and an explanation. Right, explanation deals with the how. Okay, a description deals with the forming of the in the mind, right? The idea of what in the world is this we're talking about. So final thing that you will need to grapple with will be the effectiveness of mitigation strategies and building community resilience. Okay, so we're going to build community resilience. How are some of these mitigation strategies that we can implement, right? What are they, and which is maybe more effective than the other one? So this is rather important in terms of when you're looking at comparisons between factors, right? So if you're looking at reducing greenhouse gas emissions, right? What are we looking at? International agreements and cooperation, right? How does that work? Okay, if you're focusing on low carbon technologies, what are some of these low carbon technologies that you can be talking about? Okay, who in the world uses low carbon technology? Give us example of country, of what they are doing, right? Is it beneficial to them? Has their attempts in doing this, is it a new attempt? Is it been in place for a couple of years and then you are already seeing some positives out of this process? Right, clean energy sources. What are clean energy sources? Is solar energy the only clean energy source that we can be thinking about in Singapore? Right? What about Malaysia? Okay, what about you go to a country like Japan or Greenland, okay, or Iceland? Right? What do they have to harness in terms of clean green energy source? Okay, what about China, India? Okay, why is it that in China they have this obsession with hydroelectric power plants? Okay, what do they have, and what does the hydroelectric power plant bring to their people? Okay, changing consumption pattern. This is always remember this is one of the hardest things to do because consumption patterns lead to desirable comfort outcomes for the people and the population itself. So this is really, really hard to do. But if you can, right, if you're successful in changing consumption patterns, you will definitely be able to, as a result, do or make a positive impact on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So I'm going to bring you through one very, very recent example that was in the news about Singapore and our dealing with air flights having to pivot onto more environmentally friendly fuel sources that our airplanes that fly through Changi will have to use, okay, in our attempt to do our part for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So this is something that isn't a complete change in consumption pattern, but a pivot. Uh, Maybe you can say it's a slight twist onto what we're already currently doing. Okay, to embark more on something that's low carbon, right? Enhancing carbon sinks is the final thing that you can use in comparison with as another way of mitigating strategies that community can show can help to reduce their resilience, okay, or to increase their resilience towards environmental change, right? So what are some of these strategies we can talk about when we're looking at enhancing carbon sinks? Number one, most importantly, managing land use. Okay, how can we do this through reducing deforestation, through restoring mangroves? Which country does this? Are there countries that actively do this? Okay, and what kind of benefits are they enjoying? Are they doing it at a very large scale? So this is very important. Specific examples would help. Forest regeneration as well. Afforestation and reforestation. What is the difference? Who does what? Where? These are all very important. And what's the effectiveness of all this? So always remember whether it's an OEQ or it's a short answer question. A lot of times in your mind, you have to have a larger picture. You have to have the ability, right, to see, okay, I have like 5 factors in front of me. Which are the more effective ones? Which are the less effective ones? What kind of context am I looking at? Am I looking at DC and LDC? Right? If I'm looking at DC, do I need to reshuffle my original ranking of which is more effective? Is something is going to be different if I'm looking at LDC, right? LDCs, always remember they have less money, right? They have less money, they have less resources, they tend to have a tougher timeline in life. So as a result, what they can do or what they choose to do may be different from what a DC situation, okay, a country that's a DC, or people, governments that are, in DC situations may opt for in the end. So that's important. Okay, so finally, to end off this very quick revision run, right? Format is a 25-mark structured question with one 9-mark open-ended question. The open-ended question, right, requires your normal judgment and decision-making processes. We will mark using the generic descriptors that Cambridge has come up with. Okay, the rest of the subparts will be structured questions. Okay, they could be data, they could be knowledge recall, but they are not going to be the 9-mark open-ended question, right? So with that, we end here. Bear in mind, this is important. You do need to go through and do need to do some sort of revision for these. Okay, example description, right? If you don't remember anything else, example description, you must have the top at the tip of your fingers, right? Example description, example description. So all the best for your impending common test in week 10. I hope to see you in school.